Dad slammed his fist on the table. "You let us down." Mom shouted, "Get out. We don't want you here." I left silently. Then I texted, "Great timing. I just froze your credit cards." Moments later, 27 calls flooded my phone at once. I was furious. I thought I might actually throw something. Not at anyone, just anything solid enough to break. The edge of the dining table, the stack of unopened Amazon boxes in the hallway, my mom's favorite glass candle she never lights but insists on displaying. It wasn't just the fight. It wasn't even just the words they threw at me. It was everything. The years of being treated like I owed them something simply for existing, like they were doing me some massive favor just by letting me breathe in the same house as them. This all started because I refused to hand over $5,000. My younger brother had asked me pretty casually if I could help him buy some custom crypto rig a friend was selling. Said it was a can't-miss opportunity, and he'd pay me back in 3 months tops. He even showed me a screenshot of the chat with the seller like that meant anything. He wasn't a bad kid. Actually, out of everyone in that house, he was the only one who didn't treat me like garbage. But it wasn't about him. It was about what my parents assumed I owed. They thought because they'd let me move back in after college for a few months while I was job hunting, they could treat me like some disposable extra in their perfect family portrait. Never mind that I paid for groceries half the time. Never mind that I paid for their gas when they forgot their wallet. Never mind that I paid the internet bill 3 months in a row without being asked. They didn't care. I wasn't giving them money. So suddenly, I was the villain. "Are you serious? You're going to deny your brother this one thing?" That was my dad's first line. Then came the slam. His hand hit the dining table like a judge delivering a sentence. "You failed us." And then my mom, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. "Leave. We don't need you." I remember the way the silence hit right after. It was like even the house knew something had snapped. I didn't say anything. I didn't cry or argue or beg for understanding. I just stood up, picked up my bag, and walked out the front door. Once I hit the sidewalk, I unlocked my phone and sent one text. Perfect timing. "I just froze your credit cards." The power I had wasn't something they remembered, but I hadn't forgotten. I was the one who'd helped Dad set up his online banking. I created the spreadsheets for their bills. I helped Mom figure out her Amazon Prime account. I even filed their taxes 2 years in a row. I still had access to everything. I didn't drain the accounts. I wasn't reckless. I just froze every card linked to the accounts I could control. And then the flood started. Calls, messages. My phone didn't stop buzzing. 27 missed calls in the first 40 minutes. I turned it off. My aunt pulled up in her Honda 10 minutes later. She didn't even park properly, just left the car idling and told me to get in. No questions. She already knew. We drove straight to her house. She had the guest room ready and a hot meal waiting. She even let me sleep in the next day without asking about anything. I had no idea she was going to become the backbone of everything that came next. Because this wasn't just about leaving. It was about showing them that the daughter they dismissed was the one person they never should have underestimated. And my uncle, he hadn't even entered the picture yet. But when he did, things shifted fast. They thought they'd cut me off. They had no idea who they'd actually pushed out. The next morning, my phone had 46 notifications. Texts, missed calls, voicemails, even a couple of email alerts. I didn't touch a single one. I lay there in my aunt's guest room, staring at the ceiling, still hearing the echo of my dad slamming his hand on the table, still hearing the words, "You failed us." The thing is, I hadn't failed anyone. I had asked for 3 months to get back on my feet. 3. I wasn't asking for a car or tuition or some dream vacation. I just needed time to breathe. And in those 3 months, I did everything I could to make it fair. Paid bills, ran errands, managed their paperwork, stayed out of their way. I could have moved out earlier, but I didn't because I thought stupidly they wanted to help. But apparently that generosity had an expiration date, and it came with strings so thick they could strangle someone. My aunt made me breakfast like it was just another day. No pity, no tension, just eggs, toast, and a quiet nudge to sit down. That kind of normally after what had just happened. It was almost disorienting. By noon, I finally told her everything. I expected some kind of hesitation, maybe a soft suggestion that I call them back or apologize just to make things easier. But she didn't say any of that. She looked me right in the eye and said, "Then you stay here for as long as you need." That night, Uncle Ray came back from a trip to Arizona. He walked into the kitchen with his suitcase still in hand and looked between us like he could feel the tension in the walls. My aunt brought him up to speed in about 3 sentences. He didn't react much. Just poured himself a coffee, sat down, and looked at me. Tell me exactly what happened. So I did all of it. The crypto request, the fight, the walkout, the cards. He listened like he was mentally rewiring a circuit board. That's kind of his thing. He doesn't rush. He analyzes. And then he acts his response. Then, let's make sure they don't get to control a single piece of your life anymore. That's when the shift started. We spent the next 2 hours going through every account I had access to. My dad's old PayPal still linked to my email from when I helped him verify the account. Frozen his budgeting app. I had admin rights. I locked him out completely and removed all his stored categories. Mom's Amazon account. I'd set it up for her. Same password she always used. I logged in, canceled half a dozen pending orders, turned off Prime Auto Renew, and logged her out of every device. Netflix, my Who, my Spotify family plan. Remove them all. Petty maybe. But when you've been treated like furniture for months, quiet, useful, and ignored, a little payback tastes a lot like freedom. The next day, they must have realized how deep I'd gone. That's when they started calling my aunt directly. First, Mom, then Dad, then both switching numbers. My aunt picked up one time. She didn't raise her voice. She just said, Barbara is staying here. She's not your project. And frankly, you two should be embarrassed. Then she hung up. That moment, I'll never forget it. It was the first time I saw someone from my own family stand up for me without conditions. But the biggest surprise came 3 days later. My brother, he texted me out of nowhere. No emojis, no gifts, just a plain message that stopped me cold. I didn't know they were going to do that. I'm sorry. Honestly, I think I need to get out too. I read it 3 times. I'd been so focused on cutting my parents off. I hadn't even thought about what life in that house would be like for him now. He wasn't perfect, but he wasn't cruel, either. And I knew he didn't ask our parents to blow up like that. I told him we'd talk soon. I wasn't ready yet. I had other things to finish first because the next step in my plan, it involved finally calling my father back and making it perfectly clear who was in control. Now, I waited 5 full days before calling my dad back. Not out of fear and definitely not out of regret. I waited because I wanted the silence to work on him. My dad's the kind of man who thrives on control. Knowing what's happening, who's doing what, when, and how. Me going completely quiet. That wasn't just unexpected. That was a full-blown threat to the little world. He thought he still ruled. When I finally called, I didn't even bother with a hello. This isn't a conversation. I'm letting you know how this is going to work now. He tried to cut in, but I kept going. I told him everything. That I wasn't unlocking his cards. That I had removed myself from every account, every spreadsheet, every system I'd ever created for him and Mom. That I'd already changed my number on any tax form or business file they'd ever linked me to. And if he tried anything shady, like applying for anything under my name again, I had legal help waiting. At first, he said nothing. Then he laughed. Not a real laugh. Just that kind of bitter scoff people do when they realize they're out of moves, but still want to act like they're not losing. You think this makes you powerful? You think this makes you better than your family? I told him, no, it makes me free. And I hung up. I thought that would be the end of it. I really did. For about 6 hours, I felt a kind of stillness I hadn't known in years. Not peace exactly, more like silence after a fire burns out. But of course, that wasn't the end. That night around 8:30, the doorbell rang. Uncle Ray was in the garage. Aunt Lisa and I were watching TV. For a moment, I thought it was the food delivery guy when the doorbell rang. But then it rang again, followed by loud, insistent knocking, not the polite kind. Aunt Lisa and I exchanged a glance. She peeked through the curtain and turned back, her face pale. It's your dad. My stomach sank. He started calling out through the door, not shouting, but loud enough for the neighbors to hear. He said he just wanted to talk, that I was blowing things out of proportion, that the house felt empty without me. He mentioned Mom crying and my brother going quiet. Then he brought up the money, saying I had no right to touch their accounts or mess with their business. That's when Uncle Ray walked in from the garage. He opened the door halfway, no greeting, no warning, and said, "Come back here again, and I'll make sure you answer for every time you used Barbara's name without her permission." Then he slammed the door shut. Dad stood there, stunned, like he'd just realized the game had changed and no one told him. Then he left. We sat in silence afterward. No one said it, but we all felt it. That wasn't just a tantrum. It was desperation. The next morning, I checked my credit report. I'd frozen it after leaving home, just as a precaution. Now I was glad I had because there it was, an attempted store card application in my name, dated 2 days before I walked out. He'd tried to open a line of credit using my identity, my social security number, my future, without a word to me. I showed it to Uncle Ray, and within 10 minutes, he was on the phone with a contact from an old consulting job, someone in fraud prevention at a bank. They escalated it. Dad's name was flagged on an internal watch list for suspicious activity. If he tried anything like that again, it wouldn't just be a denial. He'd face an investigation. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt numb, like I was finally scraping off a toxic layer that had clung to me for years. Revenge wasn't the goal anymore. I just wanted distance. But I wasn't the only one. 3 days later, my brother sent me a message. Just a photo of a black duffel bag on our parents' porch, captioned, "I'm out." An hour later, he showed up at Aunt Lisa's. What he brought with him, none of us saw coming. He wasn't just leaving, he had proof. When my brother arrived, he looked drained, like he hadn't slept in days and was done pretending everything was fine. Aunt Lisa let him in without a word, nodding toward the kitchen. He dropped his duffel bag by the table, unzipped it, and started pulling out documents, folders, printed emails, bank statements, all neatly organized. "What is this?" I asked. He didn't look at me, just kept sorting. "It's everything," he said. "All the stuff they've been hiding from you. Probably from the IRS, too." He finally met my eyes. "You need to see what they did in your name." He wasn't exaggerating. One folder had a credit card I didn't know existed, opened in my name while I was in college. It was paid off, but the statements showed hotel bookings and online purchases I never made. Another document listed me as a silent partner in Dad's side business, a fake LLC from the pandemic used for tax write-offs. My social security number was tied to it. Uncle Ray pulled out his phone and started snapping pictures of the documents, saying we needed backups in case anything happened. Aunt Lisa cleared a drawer in the office to store everything, calm and methodical, like she'd been expecting this. My brother sat at the kitchen table, finally exhaling. He explained the last few days. After I left, our parents unraveled. Not in public, they didn't fight. They just turned on him, blaming him for not making me stay, for not convincing me to unfreeze the accounts, for not controlling me. They weren't even mad about the $5,000. They were mad he hadn't reeled me in. Then he dropped another bomb. The crypto rig? It was never his idea. Dad found cheap parts online, planned to build and flip it for profit, and used my brother as the front to get me to help. Every time I thought I'd hit rock bottom with this, another layer appeared. That night, we made copies of everything: flash drives, cloud storage, physical folders. One set went to Uncle Ray's work safe, one stayed at the house, and one went with my brother for safekeeping. Then I made a decision. It was time to file a fraud report. Not for revenge, but because this wasn't just family drama anymore. It was identity theft, financial abuse, criminal. I filed the report the next morning, attaching digital copies of all the evidence: the fake business, the unauthorized credit card, the forged documents. I didn't know what would happen, but for the first time in weeks, I felt clarity, like a clean break. My brother and I were finally on the same side. What came next hit harder than anything before. When the fraud report started moving, it pulled in someone else, my mom's sister, Karen. 3 days after filing, I got a call from the fraud division of the bank where the credit card was opened. The woman on the line was sharp and professional. She asked me to confirm the address on the card application, which I did. Then she asked if I knew a Karen Roswell. I said no. I could hear her typing. She said $5,800 had been transferred from the fake LLC account tied to my name to an account under Karen Roswell, labeled as consulting. No paperwork, no contract. I scribbled the name on a napkin next to my coffee. Roswell. It clicked. I walked into the kitchen and said it aloud. Aunt Lisa looked up from her tablet, unfazed. "That's your mom's sister." That stopped me cold. I'd only met Karen twice, once as a kid, and once at an awkward Thanksgiving a decade ago. She'd disappeared from family events after that. Mom always called her jealous and difficult. I never pressed for details. Now it made sense. Uncle Ray and I dug deeper. He found the LLC's business registration, the one listing me as a silent partner. Sure enough, a line item for a consulting fee showed the money trail leading straight to Karen's account. It wasn't just shady, it was deliberate. I found out my mom used my name for a fraudulent scheme, forging my signature on a fake LLC. I texted Karen, who was involved, and she agreed to meet me at a coffee shop. Nervous, she handed over a folder with emails, screenshots, bank transfers, and the forged form. Karen said my mom pitched it as a tax-saving favor, but it escalated. When Karen refused to help with another fake account, my mom cut her off. Karen gave me everything, including a damning voicemail from my mom. I sent it all to a fraud investigator. The bank opened a criminal case. My dad raged at Aunt Lisa, blaming her for turning me against them. My mom left a cold voicemail, disowning me. My brother and I decided we were done with them. The next day, a letter arrived from my grandfather, who I hadn't seen in 15 years. He'd heard about the fraud and offered me an education fund my parents had hidden. My brother and I mailed the fraud evidence to the IRS. My parents stopped contacting us. I got a job offer through Uncle Ray's colleague and moved into a small apartment. Aunt Lisa gave me a candle and towels as a housewarming gift. My brother got a lease downtown. He said we were the only normal ones in the family. I laughed, but he was right. We were lucky to have Aunt Lisa, Uncle Ray, Karen, and even my grandfather, who saw us when our parents didn't. We found peace, quietly cutting them out.